Irreverent, entertaining, cool. You're listening to LA Talk Radio.
You're listening to Los Angeles Hispanic Republican Club with David Hernandez, only on LA Talk Radio.
Well, hello everybody. It's Tuesday, it's 5 p.m., and as I'm looking out over toward the northeast of the San Fernando Valley, it's a beautiful summer day here. It's really kind of nice. It's nice and green. I'm looking out over the rooftops of Notre Dame High School here in Sherman Oaks. And, above the sidewalks, everything looks, pretty darn nice. And, you don't see all of the tents and the shopping carts and all of the stuff that is, yes, even here in City Council District 4, Sherman Oaks. And so here we are. It is a good day to be alive. There's a lot of opportunities to be of service. We're very fortunate that we have individuals that believe in the Los Angeles Hispanic Republican Club, and not only with their good words and good deeds, but also with their pocketbooks. And so we want to thank C&M Metals, Don Monroe, the president over at C&M Metals at 1709 East 24th Street in Los Angeles, for his continuous support and investment in the Los Angeles Hispanic Republican Club. And a new sponsor is W.S. Dodge Oil Company. Don Downs is the president over there, and they're at 3710 Fruitland Avenue in the city of Maywood, California. And we want to thank Mr. Downs for his support. There is a lot going on. Today was the funeral for the slain CHP officer, and it's really something because we saw that this was like a routine traffic stop, and apparently there was some challenge with either the registration or with the vehicle, and that it was going to be impounded, and this was during the process of arranging for the impounding. The driver went into his vehicle and brought out a firearm, and a gun battle ensued, and I believe the officer was shot at least twice. He was able to radio for assistance. Other officers arrived on the scene. 2 other officers were also wounded. We saw last month the LAPD officer out with family members in Lincoln Heights, who was shot and killed by a tagger. And in, I believe it was Philadelphia, you had 6 police officers that were wounded. And so, more and more it seems that police officers are being shot at. I believe last night in the Eagle Rock area, you had someone begin shooting at 2 officers in their vehicle. That ended in an officer-involved shooting where the individual was killed. And so in looking at the Assembly Bill AB 392, which amends the penal code relating to police officers' use of deadly force, it seemed, in listening to the governor talking about, well, in California we're not going to accept the status quo, as if the status quo was police officers indiscriminately shooting individuals for no reason. And so now in looking at the guidelines of what the officer has to do prior to discharging his firearm, it's almost like you've got to break out this checklist of do's and don'ts, and after you've checked every box, then you can pull the trigger. But what happens in that millisecond where the perpetrator has a firearm and is able to shoot the officer, like we saw with the CHP officer? And so, in theory, this and I'm going to give the benefit of the doubt that it's coming from a compassionate place, but the reality is that the amount of time that transpires between the first when the initial contact and the discharging of the weapon is extremely short. We know that there was the big push for officers to wear body cameras, and we saw even after the body cameras that when the incident was videotaped, that it was still questioned, and it was questioned even beyond the point. Well, just because someone had a gun, there should have been some other way. You should have maybe shot it out of his hand, or wounded him, or, I remember a few years back we were working with the Los Angeles Police Department and Deputy Chief Green, and we arranged for a days of dialogue with the Los Angeles Police Department and a group of teenagers that were between probably 12 to 17 years old, and these were youth from the Sun Valley, Pacoima area. And we wanted to set up this days of dialogue so that they could sit down with police officers in an open forum. Basically, they had about 4 or 5 young people at a table with a couple of police officers, and they could ask them any question they want, and no holes barred. And that was really productive. And we were also able to have the LAPD shooting simulator brought to the facility. And so the young people got an opportunity to go through the shooting simulator. And believe me, they were shocked at how many times they failed the simulation, which meant they ended up shooting innocent people over and over and over. And it's things like that I'd like to see the elected officials who voted yes for Assembly Bill 392 to see and watch them go through the shooting simulator. Because when I'm looking at the people that voted yes in the state assembly, especially the ones here from the San Fernando Valley who are up for re-election on March 3rd, I see that Luz Rivas from the 39th Assembly District voted yes on this bill that is going to place police officers in greater danger. Also, my assembly member, Adrin Nassarian from the 46th District, voted yes. And, it basically came down to, when you look at who voted for it over and over, it's the same cast of characters. And so very questionable in the soundness of this. And I was part of an organization called Churches in Action, and what we were called upon to do was, following a officer-involved shooting in South Central LA, we were asked to go and participate in a community forum at an African-American church in South Central. And at that church, they explained you had the city attorney, you had the district attorney, you had the inspector general's office, you had someone from the mayor's office, from the police department, and they explained the process that goes through when an individual is shot and killed by a police officer. And there are so many checks and balances that are already in place before this bill, because the way that this bill is being presented and being justified is as if you had the police officers had nothing that they could do to make a difference. So let's go to someone who has just called in. Go ahead, you're on the air. Hello.
Hello, and welcome to the land of encampments.
The land of encampments. That sounds like City Council District 4 or maybe 2.
It's all of them. Unfortunately, all of them in Los Angeles.
This sounds like the former candidate for State Assembly in District 46, the dynamo from Jamaica, Roxanne Beckford Hogue, right?
Yes. Well, thank you very much for taking my call. I hope everyone out there is doing well and stepping over the poop and the needles on their way to go back to school starting this week.
Oh, that's right. It's that their public school. You had 600,000 students are starting, and the teachers and our administrators, and they're starting back. And whatever happened, and bringing just up the point that you just stated, there was a program called, I believe it was something like Safe Streets or Safe Pathways to School, that there was funding allocated so that the routes that children walk to school would be safe, whether it be from broken sidewalks or any number of things. Maybe we could tap into some of that funding in order to clean up some of these sidewalks filled with human excrement and needles.
Well, as you know, David, funding's not the problem. There's plenty of funding for lots of things. It's for some reason just not in the will, because we are selfish, horrible, mean people if we don't like the lifestyles of the meth addicted and drunk on our streets. It's unbelievable to me. I just was listening to Dr. Drew, who I'm sure a lot of you guys know is, a voice of reason, pointing out not only do we have typhus and typhoid and now the plague coming to LA, but when we get to the rainy season, all that lovely human waste is going to get into our groundwater and our water supply. But before then, the dryness of our late summer will particularize everything so that we can all breathe it in. And the kids walking on the sidewalks will track that stuff into your home.
Well, and that is, an unfortunate truth that it seems like no one wants to address. Except people like yourself and others who are heartless and don't care about the poor downtrodden hobos that they were just one paycheck away from losing their home, and those evil landlords who raise their rent so high that they kick them to the streets. And it's sad that we can't accelerate the $700,000 to $800,000 per single housing green apartment unit that the nonprofits who are politically connected to the city are squandering away the billions of dollars that.
I mean, last year they spent $719 million in LA, and apparently they spent it on getting us some more criminal vagrants for our streets because we didn't have enough.
Well,
because that's the only measurable result.
Well, but in order to justify diverting those funds to your politically connected allies, you have to capitalize on a problem. I think wasn't that Rob Emanuel that said, never let a crisis go to waste. We can't waste this, and it's funny. And the tragedy is that people do what they're going to do. Unscrupulous builders. Questionable nonprofits, they're all going to do what they're going to do, and that's why politicians, it always comes back to who is it that is responsible for the oversight, who is it that's responsible for not only conducting audits but then holding people accountable. When you go to a community meeting and you have the head of, say, LA Family Housing justify back then $575,000 per apartment unit because given her background of environmental justice, that she's making sure that these facilities are going to be the state-of-the-art green technology example. The Green Deal is going to just be spotlighted in addressing the homeless issue. So how could you really falter when she's being allowed to do it?
Well, and the irony of that is that you and I were both in a meeting where early on in this process where she introduced herself and said she used to live in Valley Village, but she couldn't afford it, and so she had moved elsewhere, as I have. Each time I have, a child, because I have 4, we've moved to another neighborhood a little further north that give us a little more space for our money. And yet we're not allowed to say to someone who's pitched a tent outside, on the 101 at Laurel by a school and a Gelson's and a really busy casting office, that they could perhaps live somewhere else. No, apparently now, once you pitch your tent, that's your zip code for life.
And
we, the
you can vote from
taxpayers,
there.
owe it to them.
It's our responsibility, and what there's so many different issues that here we are joking about it, but I think that is in order for us to stay engaged in the fight, we have to realize that the fair is in Pomona. The good guys very rarely win. And if good people don't run for office, it doesn't stay a vacuum. And these same clowns get elected over and over again. And most of the time, people sit back and don't. They'll complain, but they won't engage. They won't get out there, support a candidate, or
even run themselves. I mean, look, the important thing to remember at the end of the day, and we can make fun endlessly of the horrible policies that have led us to this, and the one-party rule not being good for Democrats either, because they're not being their own best selves. But the truth of the matter is, all these policies aren't compassionate or good for anyone, least of all the people that the ACLU is sending lawyers around so that they can sue politicians and stop them from enforcing the law. So we really do need people to step up. And the unfortunate thing is we all sort of forget our civics lessons, or may not have learned them, that all politics is local, and the local stuff really matters. So I'll meet people who do say, oh, you know what, I do want to do something. I do want to get involved. I'm going to run for Congress. And they don't seem to remember that actually Congress has nothing to do, very little to do, with the conditions on the ground in your town, in your city, in your burg, in your state. It's all about city council, speaking of LA, the Board of Supervisors, and our assembly and state senate reps. And most people couldn't name them, couldn't pick them out of a lineup, and Lord only knows these are not geniuses that we're talking about. And it's a shame that the one-party system keeps rewarding them with their $200,000 a year job, when you count in per diem, to destroy what's left of our state.
Well, look
if anyone out there is thinking, gosh, I should do something, but I don't know what, head over to lavote.net, which is the website of the Registrar of Los Angeles County, Dean Logan, and look into what it takes to run, to put your name in the hat, to see who's running. Call your local party, which in LA County, that would be your Los Angeles Republican Party, and reach out to people like me, like David, who have run before, and see what we've said about the process and get to it.
Well, and this is the right time, because I believe, and this is going to be a very interesting election cycle, because this is the first time that the city council races are aligned with the national elections. Usually it's an off year. So you always have had very low voter turnout for city council. Here in City Council District 6, just right down the road, Nuri Martinez was elected with a little bit, I think a little less than 6,000 votes. And, every week we see some challenge taking place in City Council District 6 that people are just scratching their heads, and it's like, who the hell is in charge here? And yet, in that particular district, I think 127,000 registered voters, here she wins with 6,000 votes. And that's after being an incumbent and spending hundreds of thousands of dollars. She still only gets those amount of votes. But if people don't get up and engage, it doesn't make any difference. It's like the person that graduates the last in their class from med school, they're still called doctor. And so you have these individuals that are sitting around the horseshoe at City Hall, and they know where their bread is buttered. They don't have to listen to the common person, because the person isn't going to vote anyway. So why not sell out to the special interests? Why not sell out to the developers? that are tearing down all of these affordable apartment units, and then replacing them with high dollar condos or sit back.
But by the way,
Mhm.
a lot of us like to say, like, oh, boo hiss developers, but they're only working on the chessboard that the Democrat legislators in Sacramento made. In other words, when a huge development just went up on my corner, better than the abandoned lot that was there, but there's hardly any parking spaces in there for the number of apartments. Well, guess what? In order to be quote unquote green and satisfy the requirements that we consider vehicle miles traveled, developers are getting away with having to build less parking because that'll quote unquote get us out of our cars. Someone actually said something brilliant to me the other day on Twitter. I know it was Twitter, but they said cars are to Los Angeles like jazz is to New Orleans. You can't take away our cars, and yet the road diet and the building codes, they're all about, and this new master planning community plan is all about driving you into the moving mental hospitals that we call the bus and metro system.
Well, there was somebody called, and I think it was Dr. Drew this week, where they got on a bus and there was somebody there passed out with a needle hanging out of their arm, and it's like, you know what? That's not abnormal. It's becoming more of the normal. And then when we talk about the fleas and the rats and the diseases and people get on these buses and they ride or the mental illness and over and over, it's like they don't get it. I don't care what they do with the traffic. We're not going to get out of our cars or put our family in danger by riding one of those little birds or those little scooters on our way to the subway station over here in the NoHo Arts District, so that we can get on the subway and head downtown. So if we don't get mugged or infected on the way down there, we're surely going to run into something as we walk through all the encampments surrounding City Hall. And so I guess they're so blinded by their religious adherence to green, and that.
Well, it makes them, to be fair, it makes them feel like good people. They feel absolutely superior, again, on Twitter, but someone attacked what was going on about the straws, and I said, look, I concealed carry my straws now, right? I got a bag in my purse. I got a collection in my car. I'm ready.
They better not be plastic or paper.
They're plastic straws, baby. They're plastic straws, because a paper straw is like sucking on paper mache. I have no desire to do that. I'm sure there are people who do. And by the way, McDonald's fancy new paper straws, not a single one of them recyclable. Starbucks has now made a sippy cup lid, which uses 5 times as much plastic as a straw. And in order to actually enjoy it, you have to ask for a straw anyway. So I was saying this, and someone said, what medical condition do you have that you need a straw? And that's what the left comes down to. They want to make you jump in every category of your life to their desires. What do you mean? What do I have? I just want a straw. It's a free country. I've personally never tossed my garbage into anything but the appropriate containers.
Well,
I'm not dumping India and China into the sea.
Well, except forget India, China. Look at the Atwater Village or the Frogtown area along Riverside Drive between Fletcher and right there by Las Feliz, the Las Feliz on-ramp. If you look over to the east, you'll see nothing but encampments there in between all of the trees that run parallel to the Los Angeles River. Now, where does all that human excrement end up but in the LA River? And when you look at all of the trash and debris, and they're worried about a few straws making it downstream to get in some turtle's nose, well, what's happening is so many of these sea animals are dying from all these tons of human excrement washing downriver right through the area where the mayor and the other goody goods where they like to go kayaking on the LA River. Well, that spot is downriver of where all the homeless are crapping in the water. So it's
nice.
they just and it's I took psychology at Valley College, but I don't think that qualifies me to point to some of these people and just say, you know what, they're I forget what the term is, but they're incapable of processing these facts and the reality that they've created this illusion. So all that being said, they're not going to change. And the city council races for the even number seats, starting with 2 with Paul Kekorian, 4 with David Rue, 6 Nuri Martinez. I think 8 is maybe not Kern Price. Forget who it is. But 10 and 14. Well, Jose Huizar is on his way out. He's termed out. So I think you have Kevin DeLeon is running for Jose Huizar's seat along with Monica Garcia, who was the president of the school board. So you have a lot of these recycled individuals that are running for these seats, and then you have others that, like Kekorian, that are running for re-election for his 3rd term, and David for his 2nd term. How do people get involved and say, you know what, no more? How do should these people, any of them, go unchallenged in their races?
No, there should be no coronations. Look, I immigrated to this country from Jamaica, which is a Commonwealth country. The Queen opens our parliament. And so for the first 30 something years of my life, I was a British subject, right? I would have to curtsy if I saw a member of the royal family. And we don't do that in America. We should not have coronations. Whether you're a Democrat who holds out to common sense and you're a classic liberal, or you're a conservative. By the way, city council races are non-partisan, so nobody sees your registration. The fact is, when in doubt, throw the bums out. They have done nothing but bring LA destruction, disease, and shame while enriching themselves. And at the very least, they should have to defend their record. But thanks to the dreadful Prop 14 and Mr. Republican of the Year, Arnold Schwarzenegger, Prop 14 makes it so that you can't have write-ins in a general election.
Right.
So if someone goes unchallenged in our top 2 primary system, game over. They're in.
Yeah.
They won.
And that game over is at the end of the filing period. So I believe it's around September 12th that
Well, actually, no. So at the end of that filing period, someone can file to be a write-in in the
primary.
Primary.
Okay.
So it's after the primary. And so think about doing it, but I get it. It's $1,000. It costs money to mount a campaign, and certainly when I did it, I wasn't going to spend my family's $1,000 if we had it on that.
Mm-hmm.
But you can either get signatures in lieu of that filing fee. So if you know enough people who each take a page around to registered voters, they don't have to be willing to vote for you. They just have to understand that there should be a competition. And every signature that, on that form will get you closer to not having to pay the full filing fee.
Right.
Or you could just get 40 to 60 signatures to be a certified write-in. And if there's no other candidate, I know Angela Rupert, she ran against Adrian Nazarian in 2016. She was a certified write-in who beat me by 40 write-in signatures. But a certified write-in could then, for no money, make it onto the November ballot.
Right.
And you could, so you'd have from March to November to mount a campaign. And there's some basic things you should learn and understand and do. If your own spouse tells you that you're a blithering idiot, you might not have what it takes to run for office.
Well, I
if
don't know.
you
I
can't
haven't
communicate
you ever
to
spoken to the
yourself,
city
you know,
council? I think that's
true.
almost a
But remember,
requirement.
yes, it does seem to be a requirement if you have a D after your name and the union in your pocket.
Well, that's
But if you're
that's
gonna be a
14 of the
challenger, you're
15
not
city
gonna have
council members.
right? So, start now. Talk to some people. Write an article. See if you can get an article into an op-ed into a reputable, magazine or the Daily News or the LA Times. I want to hear from us, but any one of these places. And if you can communicate in writing or in videos or in person to people, then really think about it. That's a real gift. And really think about it's a service, right? The public service. It's what it was meant to be. Our founders intended for people to put themselves out there, go to Congress or to represent their state or their city, and then get back to their regular business. I think you know this, David, I gave up a year of my life to run, and you have done many times. And I said, I'm not going to do that again because I have a young family. And I'm not young, but I have a young family. And so now I'm working with someone who did run and then say, no, I'm going to see how else I can help. And so I'm working with Carl DeMeyer right now, and a lot of you know him from Reform California, which was behind the gas tax efforts and successfully behind the repeal of Josh Newman.
Right.
Which was sort of earth-shattering. And so now Carl is stepping into the breach and running for Congress in San Diego. And people say, why are you helping someone who's running in San Diego? Because we're in L.A. Well, because of something very simple. I don't know if you've noticed, but the California Republican delegation has been decimated. There's 7 people in it. And there are almost no elected California Republicans who are here making a stink about the disaster that our state has become.
Yeah.
And so Carl wants to fight and be the voice and say, hey, folks, this is what a backbone looks like. This is what standing up looks like. And we need to, concede nothing. There's no such thing as a safe seat in California anymore.
Right.
The Democrats aren't letting it happen. They
No,
don't
and
care what the registration numbers are. They're plugging millions of dollars into every race.
well, and that's one of the challenges that I believe can be overcome. Prior to the 2018 elections, the Democrats were signaling, what they were going to do in California. They were pouring millions of dollars into California. They were paying, hundreds, if not thousands, of people to come here and prepare for ballot harvesting and doing all that stuff. And meanwhile, we had 10 assembly seats in L.A. County with no Republican on the November ballot. And to me, the tragedy of that is that it lets the left dictate the narrative as to what a Republican is. And, a white, rich, racist, homophobic, individual.
Don't forget xenophobic.
Oh, xenophobic. Oh, that's right. Okay, that's what I was. That's right.
Right. And by the way, you can't see because it's radio, but I'm from Jamaica. I have naturally curly hair, and I am not white, and I too am a white supremacist.
Well, you're a Tia Tomas. You're Uncle Tom.
Apparently, no. We've all forget the Uncle Tom and the Tia. We're all white supremacists.
We're all white supremacists. I kind of like the Vendito because it's not Bandito, but Vendito, a sellout. But when we look at, getting back to what I was about to say is that here we had 10 assembly seats. Now the average voter registration for a Republican in an assembly seat is what? Maybe 200,000, less than that.
Well, each assembly seat is for. You're representing 400,000 people.
Okay, 400,000 people. So there's 400,000 individuals that don't have a Republican actively running within a district so they can actually see, now, does this individual running, does that reflect the narrative that we're getting from the left? Because when we look at, regardless of the quality of the candidate, but we look at like the Ricardo Benitez from El Salvador, we look at Jessica Martinez, we look at the Jack Guerreros, we look at so many different well you're from Jamaica, that you see all of these Hispanics that are running, and yet Trump is a racist because he opposed basically open borders, and the dialogue that was labeled on him is that he said all Mexicans are murderers, all Mexicans are rapists, all Mexicans are this, when in reality we know that is not what he said. Yet there's no one out there in those assembly districts. That's why I think it is a good investment for the party as a whole, for the platform, for the values that we hold as Republicans, to have somebody in those races. And I know with our Hispanic Republican Club, what we're going to be doing is we're going to be hosting an event in October to help pay the filing fees for individuals that want to run in assembly seats in Los Angeles County. And so we're looking at having an event October 6th.
And here's the crazy thing.
Mm-hmm.
So October 5th, awesome. Here's the crazy thing. Is that so many people, because I'm an equal opportunity offender, right? I'll tell you the truth, no matter where. So many people on our side, I don't know, is it the glory? Is it they go, oh, assembly, ew, I don't want to run for assembly. What's that? And so we end up with situations where, in some places where 3 or 4 people or 5 people are running for Congress, because everyone knows what Congress is, not realizing that we are losing the building blocks of assembly. Sacramento is a hot zone. It is patient zero for a virulent infection that is destroying this country. And that sounds a little hyperbolic, but
not really.
It's find a point on it.
Yeah. I mean, just
the stuff that comes out of Sacramento. By the way, when Sacramento says the most important thing in a history book has to be everyone's gender and sexual orientation, the textbook companies are not printing 2 sets of books. They're printing a set of books that meets California's wackadoodle requirements and then shipping the rest of those books to the rest of the country.
Yep.
So all those people pack up their U-Hauls and think, oh, well, I've escaped. You haven't.
Nope, California's going to follow you.
Yeah.
Yep. And that's, and so I look at this is that this is an investment. We're fortunate enough to have people that look at our club as this is an investment in a marathon. It's not a sprint. It took a long time for the Democrats to get the stronghold that they have here in California. But more and more we're beginning to see, with the drastic increase in decline to state registrations, that more and more people are, they're saying, I'm focusing more on the issue and this things like what was it, the Assembly Resolution 99, where basically it would, it's saying that the number of suicides in the LGBTQ community is a direct result of being persecuted by the church and faith-based organizations. I mean, even though it was
insanity.
Yeah, it was
it's actual insanity.
It was a resolution, yet, and it wasn't an ordinance. But boy, the writing on the wall that is not being challenged. That we know that there nothing stays stagnant. It keeps on moving further and further.
It's called the Overton window, where you move the bounds of acceptable conversation and discourse.
Mm-hmm.
And like, the camel's tent under the nose, next thing you know, you're sleeping with a camel. And people are declined to state voters because people don't want to lose their livelihood or their friendships, and I'd like to keep my car, without the backs,
the key marks
coming
and
after it.
Yep.
But the fact is that you don't have to be a Republican to vote Republican. That stupid Prop 14 has a silver lining.
Well, how is that going to now?
Well,
That's one of the things that I know that we're looking at right now. In order to vote, for Assembly, Senate, Treasurer, Governor, Lieutenant Governor, that you don't have to be a Republican. But in a presidential primary, in order to vote for Donald Trump, as it stands right now, in the primary, you have to be a registered Republican. So
so there's two. You're going to get two. There's two ballots. You can ask for a Republican ballot or a Democrat ballot. This is my understanding.
Mm-hmm.
And the only thing that will be different is the Republican one will have Donald Trump on it because it's a primary. Everything below that, because of Prop 14, is
Right.
the same on all the ballots.
Correct.
Right?
Yep.
So if, for example, this is just my theory, if Donald Trump is the only person on the ballot, or by the way, if he even gets onto the ballot, because California Newsom is even dumber than Jerry Brown, which is really saying something. If Donald Trump is the only person on the ballot, right, we don't need to worry about him getting the nomination. He's getting the nomination.
Right.
Only, I doubt Kasich is going to come with a groundswell of support, but for his mom and two other people. But if we're comfortable that Donald Trump is our nominee, I don't know. I remember Operation Chaos fondly. I might cast a vote for Marianne Williamson. I'm just saying. That's me. Everybody can do what they choose to do. Your mileage may vary.
Yep. Well,
have some fun out there.
Yep. Well, and I think that's important. I think that it's not going to be an overnight success. We're going to take our little wins, where we can. John Lee was elected to finish out Mitch Englander's term. So now,
and he'll need to be elected again.
Right, and so that means Lee is back. He exhaled last week, but now he's back in election mode because he's going to be on the March ballot, and so it'll be interesting to see with the amount of Democrats that we know are going to turn out. This is where, the Democrats were very creative in aligning the local city races with the national races because, with 25 candidates running for president on the Democrat side, the voter turnout in March amongst Democrats is going to be massive. And hopefully John Lee will be able to hold on to his seat, but that's not a guarantee.
Well, that's why if you're listening to David, you must get out in March. So many people, so many Republicans don't think their vote counts, don't think their presence matters. But guess what? You do. And it's not even a normal year where it was a June primary. We don't have primaries anymore in California. We have 2 general elections. Vote in March as if your life depends on it, because by the time November comes around, there may be no Republicans left on the ballot.
Right, and I think that
encourage everyone to get out in March.
That could very well be the case because we are going to see a massive Democrat voter turnout, and even Republicans, some will say, well, it doesn't make any difference. Trump is going to be my nominee. Why should I bother? But in every seat,
Marianne Williamson.
That's why it's vital to have Republicans on the ballot for Assembly. For Senate, for school board, we do have a Republican on the school board, and it's and someone, and it was great when he first came around and announced that he was running for the school board. I remember meeting him at at one of the Republican clubs, and basically nobody would talk to him because they're thinking, school board, what the heck is that? Well, and I don't know if you were at a meeting that I held in North Hollywood, where I invited him to come and speak. And boy, he was being grilled on everything from the Federalist Papers to, all of the union busting and blah, 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 blah. And it was like, people, here you have a Republican that's willing to reach out, and, we're treating him as if he's running for Congress. And so I was one of the first people to have him on my show, and we were fortunate enough he won. And what I really liked about Scott is he said, it's the students first. That's whatever else is wrong, it's still the students first. And I know that is that George McKenna, who is now the new head of LAUSD, is the uncle of our sponsor, CNM Don Monroe. That's his uncle. And so there are good people out there, and believe me, school board is really important given the new curriculum that is being implemented this year in the schools. It is really important to have somebody on the school board that is at least willing to listen to you, to some logic and reason, and not just blow you off because you're not going to write the big checks for me. But so it's important. Run for office,
right?
Everybody.
Yeah.
Run for office will help you.
Everybody. And David is a great person to shepherd you through that process. So call in, ask him about some basic stuff. I will say one thing that a lot of people don't know that you need to have. It all comes down to, especially with such a crowded ballot that we're going to have this year now that everything's in alignment, your ballot description. Mm-hmm. So if your job right now is
mortician,
a lady of the evening, perhaps you should start working as a paralegal before you file, so that you can say you're a paralegal. I'm gonna run it right now, David. But thank you again for all you do, and do check out. You can always find me at on USA.org, and Carl DeMaio, of course, is Carl CarlDemaio.com, and his podcast, because he had to stop his radio show for running. He lays it all out there. His second episode of his podcast, especially the second half, is all about who should run, how to run, and having some backbone here in California.
That's right. You got it. And I know you're a person with backbone. Thank you, Roxanne. I appreciate all you do.
Well, we're all happy to serve, because this state deserves better. It really does.
You got it. Bye for now. Thank you.
Take care. Bye.
Okay, Roxanne Beckford Hogue, and that's right. There are a lot of good people out there that are thinking about running, but really don't know what to do. Believe me, there are, granted, there are unscrupulous people. When you make a statement like you're going to run for office, they get a big smile on their face, and in the back of their mind, they're thinking, how much money does this person have? And how am I going to get my hands on it? And, that's just the reality of politics here in California, as you have a lot of the consultant class that, depending on the size of your bank account, how much money are you willing to invest in yourself? I mean, that sounds good. Or they'll say, you need to raise $100,000 before you even, you're going to be a serious candidate and basically, pay me $80,000 as a consultant. When in reality, I remember a campaign that we were involved in, and an individual who had spent 30 years volunteering in the community for special needs kids, for adult education, won a state assembly seat with less than $14,000. And, that was just a reality. There is no substitute for hard work. You're not going to be able to pay your way into office. Look at the things that are possible. Listen to what the voters are talking about. Get some advice from people who are looking to truly to help you, help others, and not just enrich themselves. So be sure and go to our website, Los Angeles Hispanic Republican Club. Look for the election 2020 section. Click on it, and you'll see the candidates that we are listing who are running for office. And also, don't forget, we want you to download our phone app on your phone. So go to the Play Store on your phone and look for LA Talk Radio. That's LA Talk Radio, and it's a free app, so you can download that, and then you can listen to us, and you don't have to be in front of a computer to listen to us. You can take us with you. So go to the Play Store on your phone, download LA Talk Radio, and you'll be able to listen to all the shows here on all LA Talk Radio. So until next week, this is David Hernandez saying thank you, and I'll talk to you then.
You're listening to Los Angeles Hispanic Republican Club with David Hernandez, only on LA Talk Radio.